Hello, and welcome to Law Deals, the podcast for legal professionals navigating the business of law firm partnerships, and law firm transitions. I'm Ed Alexander, and today I'm joined by Jennifer Bondy. Together, we're going to be diving into her inspiring journey of overcoming a turbulent childhood to successfully modernizing and selling a law firm. All of that while building a practice that supports her life rather than consuming it. I met Jennifer through a mutual friend, Daniel Whitehouse. She and Daniel are part of our informal entrepreneur attorney group that meets via Zoom the second Wednesday of every month. I find Jennifer to be quite unique and a true entrepreneurial attorney. And I think you're going to find this episode pretty inspirational. So welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks. Let's start off with your childhood. So you characterize that as turbulent, but credit it for giving you a strong drive to build stability. So please tell us how you made it from the Florida foster care system, which is no easy feat, into being a successful attorney and law firm owner that you are today.
Yeah. Sometimes that's a difficult place to start, right? I'm always used to leading with my career. So starting with my childhood, it takes a little bit of recalibrating, but I think most of us recognize that our childhoods and our life experiences in general kind of shape who we become. For me, it was a mix of, some positive experiences. Certainly my childhood wasn't all bad. And then also some challenges. So I was raised by a single mom who, did her best, I think, with the skills and resources that she had, which resulted in spending some time in foster care because there were times where she, couldn't take care of us. And as a kid, you have zero control over those circumstances, right? Things are done to you. You don't get to do things. So for early on, I kind of realized that I didn't want to live like that when I grew up and could kind of control what my outcome would be. At the same time, I do try and recognize some of the positive things that my mom taught me. So there are kind of two key values that I learned that I think really drive my, successful spirit today. One is that she installed in us the importance of education. So I just remember her always saying, education is something that no one can take away from you. And two, she always gave us confidence. So my mom was the type that she always told us that we were smart and we were beautiful and we could be anything that we wanted to be. And I think to me, that's a key driver because not everyone has a cheerleader or support system that encourages them to do their best and make them think that they're capable of accomplishing things. So kind of taking that mindset of focusing on education, knowing that I'm capable, and then taking my personal drive of wanting to overcome these circumstances, I think is kind of what led me down this path.
That's fascinating. I mean, you can see the difference. Just a little bit of background. I do guardian ad litem work, which is essentially working with kids that are in the foster care system or through the Department of Children and Families here in Florida. And you can really see the difference where a child has a great relationship with a parent and there's just circumstances that the parent care for the child or something along those lines versus instances where there really is, a problem there and the outcome. So that's great that even though she wasn't able necessarily to care for you all the time, that she really did instill that mindset in you. And that mindset is so important, right?
Yes, mindset is key to everything. And I will admit, we did not have a great relationship, right? I think a lot of counseling and maturity and empathy on my part after becoming a parent myself helped me to realize some of her struggles that attributed to her lack of ability to take care of me. But your point remains the same, right? Having someone that I know truly loved me and wanted the best for me versus, being talked down to or belittled made a huge difference.
That's great. So where did you go to college and where did you go to law school and how did that all work out without necessarily having a big support system behind you?
When I was graduating high school, I found out that I was going to receive the Bright Futures Scholarship. So in Florida, we have a program called Bright Futures where people in the state of Florida, if they meet certain requirements, I believe you had to have so many hours of pro bono, or not, it's not pro bono because it wasn't legal, community service hours,
Yeah.
and meet certain academic requirements that you can go to college and it's paid for by the state. And so I honestly didn't even find out that I was going to receive that until, awards night, and they said my name for being a recipient of Bright Futures. And I said, oh, great. I guess I have a way to go to college. I mean, I knew I would go to college, but that obviously was nice to have it paid for and not have to take out student loans. And going back to that value that my mom instilled in me of pursuing education, I kind of always knew I would go to college. But having the lack of financial support system, I always had to work through school. And so I went to school full time and I worked full time as well. And so my first long-term boyfriend, his mother was a vice president of human resources at our local credit union. And so she had mentioned to me that there was a floating teller pool. So you could kind of work on the days that you weren't going to school, and they would float you around to the different branches who maybe had someone on maternity leave or had a position to fill or someone was out. That's kind of where I started my career. And so I went to school Tuesdays and Thursdays, worked Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then my career progressed in the banking industry. So through the credit union, I worked as a floating teller, and then I worked in the call center, kind of answering people's, questions about their accounts and whatnot. And we always kind of ran promotions for who can sell the most credit cards, who can answer the most calls. And I guess that driven spirit in me always led me to kind of always want to succeed and be the winner in those competitions. So eventually I started working in a sales-based branch where we got credited and paid on a performance-based system for how many accounts you open, how many loans you do. And then I became a branch manager. And so that was a 10-year history that I'm obviously condensing because no one needs to hear all the boring details. But after 10 years in banking and becoming a branch manager, I kind of sat back and said, well, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? I was, it was a good career start, but I knew that I wasn't going to be satisfied being a branch manager for the rest of my life. And so I did have a relationship with my mom where I called her and, was telling her I was thinking about going back to school and wanted to get my master's in business and evaluating kind of what more opportunities that would afford me. And she had encouraged me to go to law school right out of high school. But at the time, 7 years of school sounded like an eternity. But at 26 and already going through 4 years of school, going through 3 more years of school meant I'd graduate by the time I was 30. And to me, at that point, my perspective had changed that I'd have my whole career in front of me. So that's how I got started going back to law school and leading down the career path in the legal industry.
Fantastic. So you get your law degree, you take the bar, you pass the bar, and then you go to work. So this starts kind of the journey of law firm ownership indirectly. Tell me about the first job that you had and how that led to you becoming a law firm owner.
So the first job I had right out of law school was through a friend I was in law school with, was a paralegal at a firm, and they had an attorney leave and were looking for someone to fill that role. So I worked there at Trastevere there in Clearwater, Florida, for about a year doing real estate transactions and some light municipal work. And then we were commuting, so filling in some gaps there. My husband was my fiance at the time. We were living in Orlando, but to get that first job right in Clearwater, we made the sacrifice to move to Lakeland, and I was commuting to Clearwater and he was commuting back to Orlando. So after about a year of that, we're like, this is a long commute.
Right. So for those of you who aren't in this area, that is a significant distance to go because I-4 is constantly backed up, right? So it's just choked with traffic in both directions, from Lakeland to Orlando and from Lakeland to Tampa. And then not only that, you had to go through Tampa to get to the Pinellas County area where this job would be in Clearwater. So not an easy drive.
I forget. There's people who aren't familiar with Florida landscape. So my commute was about an hour and a half each way, and my husband's was an hour each way. So a year of doing that kind of wears on you. So he had asked me if I could start looking for jobs back in the Orlando area. And I found a confidential position that was posted in Osceola County, and it said it was the oldest operating law firm in Osceola County. And so I start Googling and I find out which firm it is, and I start to wonder what their mindset is going to be, if they're even going to be open to a woman practicing law, right?
Right.
I don't know everyone's views when we're talking about an older demographic.
And so, again, another point for those of you who are outside of Florida is, so Orlando is a fairly metropolitan area, Orange County, Seminole County. And then Kissimmee is a little more old Florida.
Yes.
And surprisingly so, because it's not that far from Orlando, but it really does have a completely different tenor. So when you're approaching this, especially many years ago, right, you're approaching this from the context of, am I going into old Florida, and what are these people going to think about a woman practicing law?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Thank you for clearing up that context. But when I got there, the partners at the time, I mean, we really hit it off. I remember distinctly leaving there and telling my husband, I really like these guys. I hope they give me a job. But the promise that they had given was two of the partners were approaching their 70s or in their early 70s, and one partner was about 50. And so they were looking for someone that they could fast track to partner. And so, of course, that's appealing to me as a young attorney with only a couple of years experience under my belt, but also knowing my capabilities or being confident in my abilities to learn quickly and grow fast. And so I thought that sounded like a great opportunity. And these sounded like, gentlemen that I would really like to work with. So after a couple of years, they made good on their promise, right? They offered me partnership after, about 3 years of being with the firm. And there was a small buy-in, but the buy-in, actually, I have to say the remaining partner at the time cut me an amazing deal. So I bought in at a significantly discounted rate for a firm that was generating 7 figures in revenue. I paid, a small fraction for a third ownership in the firm. And then later on.
Yeah, let me stop you there, because I just want to explore that a little bit, right?
Sure.
So they want to make you a partner. They basically say, hey, here's a number. Did you just write a check? Did they allow you to pay it over time? What did that look like?
The buy-in, like I said, was so they gave me a figure initially, which would have required me to get financing. And then when Tim kind of reconsidered and he said, well, I bought in at a significant discount. I kind of want to pass that discount on to you. And so he did let me pay over time. So essentially, once I received my partnership, my distributions that I received would go towards paying him over a year period. So it took about a year for me to pay off that balance.
So what I call this the sign and drive program, right? Because basically you become an instant partner and you don't have to put any money down into the deal. You drive off the lot with your partnership, and the profits really pay for the partnership, right? So
yes,
you receive profits and distributions. You have to pay taxes on those distributions. And then ultimately, whatever's left over, you are writing a check back to the partner who sold you your interest, right?
Yes, exactly.
So that's typically done for a small initial partnership arrangement, right? So the idea is, rarely does an associate have any substantial resources to come in and write a big check. And so this is really the entree into partnership and really setting up that arrangement where the associate can be, number one, the succession plan, but also, and really often more importantly, the associate is now really held in with golden handcuffs, right? Because they're a partner in the firm. You pay these amounts over time. Tell me what happens then.
So then eventually, my partner, Tim, at the time had decided that he and his family wanted to move. He's from the Midwest, Oklahoma, and he wanted to move back to Oklahoma, be closer to his aging parents, have his son grow up with his cousins. And so then that led to the firm becoming 100% mine. There are some bumps there, and I don't know if you want to go into some of those, but eventually I became full owner of the firm because he wanted to relocate. And then COVID happened, right? This was 2020. And so a lot of things kind of happened all at once. And all of a sudden I was the brand new proud owner of a law firm that I had to run by myself with a brand new baby.
So to the extent you feel comfortable unpacking some of that, let's unpack a little bit of that, right? So you're a partner, kind of generally what kind of percentage? You're 10% partner, 20% partner?
I was 1/3 partner, and then later we were 50-50 partners. And so I think that was key into the buyout structure, right? When we were 50-50 owners, which I would not recommend for anyone, right? If you're bringing on a partner, at least make it 51-49 so that someone has the end say. So when we were 50-50 partners, this is when he made the decision he wanted to move back home. And I was about to go out on maternity leave to have my second child. And so this was kind of sprung on me last minute.
Surprise.
And yeah. And he said he wasn't going to move until the end of the year. And then I get a call while I'm on maternity leave, and he wants me to do the closing on his house because he sold his home. Surprise, I'm back in the office a lot sooner, but that led to some, I would say, contentious negotiations, but there wasn't a lot of negotiation power because of the 50-50 ownership structure. And so we were able to come to a mutual understanding, and I took over the firm, but in a very quick capacity, right? I wasn't set up for eventually becoming the managing partner, because prior to that, I wasn't really in control of managing the financial aspects and administrative aspects of the firm. So it was a hit the ground and learn, what's the saying? Fly the plane while you're trying to, repair it. Yeah. A lot of that.
So let's just kind of go over a couple of those points. So the first thing is, I love the point that you made on the 50-50, right? And it's important, and I really kind of talk a lot about this with clients, is that if you want it to be a 50-50 profit arrangement, it doesn't necessarily have to be a 50-50 control arrangement, right? Because you can set up non-voting stock that'll participate in profits and do that. So it's really important to keep in mind, how is this going to be controlled? Where are we going to go? The next thing is, I didn't hear that there was a shareholders agreement in there allowing him to do this. So I'm guessing you didn't really have a good partnership agreement. I use shareholders, but partnership agreement.
Correct. Right. There was really no documentation, which I think we'll, dive into more than the rest of the conversation about me taking over the firm. Right. But I think we had a bylaws book that got dusted off at some point. But yeah, other than that, you would think attorneys would be smarter to know that, hey, maybe we should document what we're doing. But I think a lot of business owners, you go in with rose-colored glasses and no one thinks anything's ever going to go wrong. So there we were, left in a predicament without any documents to provide us direction.
Yeah. So, that you are dead 100% right, that people go into this thinking, hey, it's the honeymoon. It's going to last forever and everything's going to be wonderful. And nobody's ever going to challenge, because I know Jennifer and she'll do whatever I want, whatever. Right. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, that just doesn't work, because things change, right? The biggest change that we often see is that somebody gets a divorce, and then they start dating again. And then the new spouse comes along, and the new spouse is saying, well, why is it done that way? Well, you should do it this way. Well, this is, and so that adds a completely different dynamic to the relationship. You really can't know that that's coming. So that's just one of many things that really should be part of the plan. So that's why you need the agreement in the first place. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
And then the third thing that was really important there that I want to point out to the audience is that what you said was, he didn't have any power of negotiation, because he was at a 50% ownership, you were at a 50% ownership, and we don't have any documents, right? And so you could technically be stuck in that arrangement, right? So if you're wanting to leave your practice, the best thing you can do is to plan that departure at the time that you bring on your partner, whether that's an equal partner or somebody that you're bringing in who is formerly an associate, and you're bringing them up in their career. So very important points there.
Yeah, well, and I would say, even establishing an agreement at any time, right? Even if you're already partners, while things are still intact and you have a good relationship, is probably a much better time to try and put an agreement in place, as opposed to having nothing, even if you don't do it on the front end as far as pre-planning. But certainly before you move across the country and have already uprooted your family and left the firm, would have been a better time to
certainly a better time.
Have some documents in place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So now you're the full owner of this firm. So tell me about what you did. You really modernized this firm. You did, going from the oldest firm to now, you're a dynamic business owner, you're an entrepreneurial attorney. what do you do when you come into this what might have been a stodgy firm?
I changed a lot. So there were no systems in place. So as I kind of hinted at with the documentation for the bylaws, no shareholder agreement, the way each attorney practiced was even different from one another. So we were much set up as solo practitioners with their own support staff. So it was kind of set up, there's one attorney, one paralegal, and we all had a shared receptionist, but they all had a different way of how they wanted even their files set up, their intake documents. So nothing was uniformed. And clearly I could see from my perspective how inefficient that was, training new people and just operationally trying to make sure that we all knew what everyone should be doing, right? So modernizing it as far as I'm just going to start documenting what our procedure is and then adjusting it so that we've got a standard operating procedure. So I worked very closely with our office manager and lead paralegal who is with me today. Tony is my right hand now, but we really got acclimated there where I would kind of ask her a lot of questions. Hey, why do we do things this way? Why are these accounts set up this way? And so she had a lot of historical knowledge from before I was even there. We also, I knew that we needed some automation. So there's, of course, a lot of data entry that gets duplicated, just, filling out client matters and then the templates of documents, right? So I'm like, okay, can we look at some software that can automate some of these steps where if we put someone's name in one time, it can then duplicate those fields into these documents. And then all we're left to do is the substantive piece. So I brought on some new practice management software as far as just trying to document the standard operating procedures. Those were kind of the things that I did to modernize the firm.
Excellent. So one thing you said in there, which is really important on the partnership side, just to continue that theme, is that expense sharing does not equal a partnership, right? And really what they had was all individual firms that would just happen to be operating under the same roof with the same name. And the problem with that, obviously, is that your team, you hire a team, you've got really individual silos. So, Billy Bob's assistant can't help John when John needs help with it, right? Because Billy Bob's assistant has no idea how John does what he does. And so,
yes, great point. Because I also implemented cross training, because you're right. One attorney did estate planning, one attorney did real estate transactions, one did litigation. And so I said, hey, we need to have some cross training so that if Billy Bob's assistant is out, someone can help Billy Bob, right? So yeah, cross training was another thing I implemented.
Sometimes when you come into these situations, you have a staff that's there. They're really, I don't know, they have ownership over the chaos that's there. And so now here you come in, you're younger than them. And now you're trying, well, let's use some technology and let's do this system and let's do that. You must have faced some resistance in that process.
Yes. So as I mentioned that the prior partners were advancing in age, their staff had been with them a long time, which, to their credit, they were able to retain the same staff for a very long time. And I think, part of why I wanted to join the firm was a lot about their culture and the way that they just engaged with people inside and outside the firm. So they had, staff members that have been with them 20 years. And so there definitely was some resistance to change. So I essentially had a full turnover in staff over the course of about 2 years. Some of it intentionally, right? I'd set the standard of this is what we're going to do, trying to engage them and this is why we're doing it. These are the benefits of doing it that way. But if they didn't want to get on board, then, I completely understood, but this was still the direction that I was taking the firm.
Excellent. Great. So, okay. So now there comes a time when I think you've decided that you wanted to sell that firm. Tell us about how that came to be.
So selling the firm wasn't in my plan. As I'd mentioned that I went into a coaching program, I also had some other mentors, formal and informal. And one of those mentors had her own firm for about 20 years. And I, would have conversations with her about things I want to implement in the firm. And so it kind of became more formalized where we'd meet on a regular basis. And so after a while of us having these conversations, she had invited me to join her practice. But that practice didn't really align with the practice I had. She dealt with much more high net worth individuals. And so she had offered me an opportunity to work in her firm. And at first I declined, right? I had no interest in giving up my own firm, but I always say I'm not going to say no to something without hearing the offer. And so the offer sounded very appealing at the time, potential for equity partnership there. And then that would also allow me to sell the firm I had, because my clientele didn't meet the model and the criteria that they would need to either merge with her firm or be onboarded as clients there. And so that is really how the sale came about was, well, I've got this firm. What am I going to do with it? Certainly, I'm not just going to shut it down. There's, like I said, 7-figure revenues here. So what can I do? And so then I started thinking about what would I need to do to sell it. And I had a partner at the time, a non-equity partner, who I offered to sell the firm to. Of course, it's huge news that I'm telling her that I've decided that I'm going to leave the firm, but I offered to allow her to buy the firm and she accepted. So that was an internal sell, which I think was a lot easier than me going and marketing to outside firms.
So that is a very tough conversation to have. And many of the attorneys that I work with are always afraid of the reaction that they're going to get from their internal attorney when they kind of have that, hey, I'm looking to, in most cases, retire. In your case, I'm looking to leave and do something else. And they're worried about that person then starting to leave and, there being an exodus of people from the firm. Tell me about that conversation and how it went and how it really came out so successfully.
Oh gosh, there's a lot there. So I think my situation is a bit unique because I wasn't retiring, right? So I think sometimes when we're talking about someone retiring, it is somewhat expected, right? It is a difficult conversation to have, but if someone's in their 60s or 70s, it's not surprising when they say, hey, I'm thinking about retiring. But for me at 39 years old to go into my partner, who was also older than me by a couple of years, and tell her, hey, I am made a decision that I want to leave the firm. It was very difficult, right? I wasn't necessarily scared that there'd be a mass exodus of the firm, because firm culture is something that I really worked hard to implement through my tenure. So I felt like I had a lot of loyalty. Now, it wasn't to say that I didn't think she might leave, that she might say, no, I don't want to buy the firm. I'll go somewhere else. So there was that fear. And so I guess I had to proactively plan, well, if that's her response, what am I going to do next? And so I did have some backups of some other firms in the area that I thought might be interested in purchasing the firm if she declined. But she is a wonderful, amazing attorney, but she isn't business, like the rainmaker type. So she's not the one who's going to be going out and networking. And so it really was an ideal situation for us, where she saw the value in the firm and knew that it was a good situation for her as a great experienced attorney to have a stream of income that's coming in without her having to go and do additional business development for it.
That's great. That's wonderful. So, so the key takeaways there: culture, knowing the person and understanding, right? What their characteristics are. And frankly, what you had there was what most firms have, right? It's the owner of the firm is the one who's developed, goes out and gets business and does all those things. And the internal person is more technician oriented. And that to me is not a pejorative, right? So more technician oriented, focus on getting the work done. It's a great testament to you that conversation went so well. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
All right. So she purchases the firm. Did you finance the firm for her? Did she go get a loan? What did that look like?
She used SBA financing because I did sell it at a market rate as opposed to kind of the discounted rate that I had received when I bought in. And part of my thought process there is I had put it in a lot of sweat equity, right, to modernize it. And I saw the value of the firm. So I wanted to make sure that I was compensated for that. And so she used SBA financing to purchase the firm.
So that process takes a while. So you're looking to, and just so that everybody understands, the SBA process is going to take at least 75 days and could go up to 120 days, right? Because of all of what has to get done to get to that point where you're at the closing table. And so you're looking at going to another firm. And so this process is going on. So a couple of things. One is, one of the SBA issues typically comes up is the owner going to compete against the firm after they leave? You're still going to practice law, albeit in a different county, but you're still, so how did you work that out?
That's a great question, because you're right. That is something unique where a retiring attorney would obviously not be practicing law anymore. So our non-compete clause indicated that I would not have an office in Osceola County. So that it was specifically referenced that I would continue to practice, but it would be in Orange County. And obviously I had non-solicitation clauses so that I couldn't solicit the employees and I couldn't solicit the clients to come with me. So the standard clauses were there, but obviously with the caveat that I would still be practicing in another county.
And just so that everybody who's listening to this knows, at least the Florida bar rules contain in the comments a specific exception for a sale that's undertaken under Rule 4-1.17, which is the sale of practice rule. So you must have gone that route, right, with the notice to clients and all of those things.
Yes. And I think because I had a good relationship with the attorney who purchased the firm, it was very easy for us to craft a joint letter to the clients. And the fact that because the firm I was going to was a high net worth firm that had certain requirements for firm onboarding, it wasn't a conversation of, okay, am I going to take some of these clients, or what happens if these clients want to go with me? Because it wouldn't affect the value of the firm, right? We weren't having a conversation about what clients might go with me. It was all directed at just making sure that they understood the process would be they'd still be taken care of. Their paralegal that's assigned to their case would continue to be their point of contact, and they were in great hands. So that, again, was something kind of unique with our buy-sell arrangement, but I think it helped that we had a good relationship. But you're right, it was about 115 days. It was beginning of November when I had the conversation about selling the firm to her, and it was my birthday, March 24th, when we closed on the sale.
That's a nice birthday present.
It was. My 40th birthday is one to remember.
No, there you go. The transition, because a lot of people worry about, a lot of buyers worry about that goodwill, right? So Jennifer goes away and I'm the buyer, and do all the clients go away? Now, I will say that I've never, ever seen that happen, but that's what people think is, are all the clients going to go away? How did you manage that process?
That's a great question. And since the firm had been around long before me, we had kind of already experienced that fear wasn't a reality, right? So we had the attorneys who had retired prior to us. People called in. They were specifically looking for the attorney who had worked on their matter before or had drafted their will. And we simply said, so-and-so is no longer with us, or so-and-so is retired, but we can schedule you with this attorney. And 99% of the time that was fine, right? Someone's called into the firm because they have a need and they've already got an attorney on the phone. So they're usually fine with scheduling with someone that's going to be competent in helping them. Now, of course, their conversion rate may be different if they just don't like the relationship with the attorney, but the calls and the stream of clients certainly didn't change by the retirement of the former partners. And I made sure that when I was leaving, I had introduced everyone that I had ongoing relationships with to the new attorney. So there was definitely a warm transfer there.
Yeah, that part is really key, is that introduction, the letter, the joint letter is so important, right? So you have to send a letter under Rule 4-1.17, right? And that you got to give them the three elements, which is the firm is being sold, right? This is notice, and you have an opportunity to opt out, right? Or to hire another attorney if you want to do that. The key part of that is it can be way more than that, right? Because it can be, there's no prescription on what you have to put into it. And so the important part is for the seller to sell the buyer, right? For the seller, I have utmost confidence. And in the retirement capacity, what we say is basically, I'm still going to be around, because typically we want the seller to be of counsel, right? And so in that case, it makes the clients feel comfortable, and the clients may not even read the letter, right? They may just put it off to the side. And then when they call, the experience that you had really happens, which is, oh, no longer here, or retired. Retired is a nice way to put it, right? Because then they understand they can't find that attorney any longer. And typically, if the buyer handles the process well, the client just moves over to the buyer. There's not an issue at all. So that's great.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Good. All right. So you go to the other firm. I know that ultimately that didn't pan out for you. You had some differences there, and so you started another firm.
Yes.
So tell us about your current firm, and then I want to get to this enormous vacation you had this year.
Okay. Well, I'll fill in another little gap there. So when I had evaluated whether I'd sell the firm and take this opportunity, I had thought, what am I going to do if this doesn't work out? Right. Because everything that glitters isn't gold.
Right.
So I knew from what I had experienced between becoming partner at the old firm, modernizing it, I felt confident that if this new opportunity didn't work out, I knew I was capable of launching and running another firm again. Now, I thought that might be 5 years down the road, not 5 weeks down the road, but that was always my backup plan, was to start a new firm. So after we took a couple of months off, because I'm sure you know, since you deal with purchase and sales all the time, just the mental load of going through that process from telling my partner that I want to sell the firm, going through the closing, transitioning to a new firm, that not working out, all the mental load of that, I had to take a break before I could launch my firm, right? I wasn't ready to just gear right back up and start, growth mode for a new firm. But eventually I did.
Yeah. So the good news is you did it. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't do it, right? And there is that emotional component of, I'm just completely exhausted because of this transition, and I need some downtime. I need some quiet time or time to do the things that I love to do. So I'm glad you were able to take that.
Yes. And I have a great support system. So my husband, I took it as I was offended by his statement, but now in hindsight, I understand it. He didn't think it would work out, the new move, because he said, I can't work for other people. And I took offense to that, thinking there was something wrong with me. But in hindsight, and then obviously after we've had conversations, we know that I want to be in control, and I know what I want to do. So crystal clear on my vision that the other opinions sometimes can be noise.
So I will tell you, I have that same problem, right? I can't work for anybody either because I'm a control freak too.
Yeah.
I don't know. It is what it is, right? No, neither good nor bad. It is what it is. All right.
You know your strengths, you know your weaknesses. I think awareness is key.
That is very key. So tell us about your current firm.
So my current firm, I relaunched my own law firm, and as I had mentioned before, the main paralegal and office manager at the old firm, she had actually left the firm before I left. She had kind of gotten burnt out on the practice of law, went to go work in the financial services industry, and then she was looking to relocate. So her and I kind of stayed connected, would have lunch on occasion. And so when she was looking to move and was looking for other jobs, I had invited her to come and work for me. And she, of course, wanted to make sure that I had the financial security that I could pay her salary if she accepted, but she ultimately did. And so she's been with me since the very first day. And I think for me, that was instrumental in having someone that, one, I know I can trust. I know we work well together. I know that she's competent and capable. And she handles all the details that I don't like to handle, right? So she's very good at all the administrative work. And so that allowed me to know that I had someone who could answer the phones for me. I had someone that already knew my processes. Of course, I kept some of my intellectual property to repeat with my new firm. And then I went out and just tried to drum up business. I relied on the relationships that I had already in Orange County, Daniel, our mutual friend being one of them. I kind of reconnected with everyone that I knew to let them know I had relaunched a firm and was looking to establish relationships in Orange County. And that's kind of what started this trajectory. But right now it's still just Tony and I, and then my husband does some business development for us as well.
What I've always found and seen is that if you go out to your contacts and you tell them, hey, I'm starting a firm or, whatever, that people want to give you business, right? As long as they know, like, and trust you, they want to give you business. And that is really the fastest way to get launched again. So kudos. That's great. That's great.
Yes, I think that's an untapped resource for a lot of business owners, particularly attorneys. You don't want to network with other attorneys because they see them as competition, but other attorneys are my biggest referral source. And I am the same way. I send a lot of referrals to other attorneys. So that's.
Yeah, no, I think attorneys are, well, at least they're our number one referral source, and CPAs would be second. Former clients. So kind of those three are our keys right there. So good. All right. So You create the firm, you do this, and then you decide, I'm going to take a month off. And you went to New Zealand and Australia, right? That's right.
Yes.
All right. So how did you set up the firm so you could take a month off?
Well, relying on some of the stuff I had learned with my prior firm, I made sure that we had practice management software. So I had systems in place with a lot of automation. So the help of technology has been wonderful. So implementing things that I knew could run without too much human intervention. Clearly, we have some human oversight, but someone can schedule an appointment through our answering service. It gets put into Calendly, so they get automatic reminders, materials in advance of the appointment. That information goes into our practice management software. I have the consultation with them. The file gets set up, right? A lot of things happen automatically with certain triggers. So that helped me to be in a position where I knew that if I took time off, there wouldn't be a huge impact in the business. The other thing was also setting expectations, right? So for myself and for clients, so existing clients, I made sure if we had pending matters, I'm going to be unavailable for this time period. We can either try and get this wrapped up before I leave, or we'll be handling this when I get back. And then for myself, understanding that that might result in a dip in income, right? If I've made the decision that I'm going to be unavailable, certainly there may be some financial consequences of that. So setting realistic expectations for everyone was also key.
Yeah, that last part is important, right? Because if you're a producer in your firm, obviously you're not going to produce while you're away. Although, the technological piece would allow you to produce really from anywhere in the world. Although I think Australia might be a little bit difficult because you'd be staying up all night while your family slept, trying to communicate with the East Coast of the United States. So.
And originally my plan was to make my calendar available so that I could have consultations and not have a gap in new client onboarding. But I made the decision that I actually wanted to disconnect and have some downtime and spend quality time with my family. So I made the decision not to have any consultations during that time.
That's great. All right. So things are going well. I'm happy for you, and that's fantastic. But because you apparently don't have enough to do, you're launching a coaching business as well. And it's called Lawyer to CEO. So what prompted this, and how does this tie in with your philosophy about lawyers becoming business owners?
What prompted it was my desire to want to share what I've learned with other people. So we talk about reconnecting with prior relationships. People ask questions. Well, how do you do it? What do you do? As other law firm owners, you share tips with one another. And so I kind of wanted to formalize that. And how can I help other people learn what I've learned, change their mindset to know that they don't have to, be chained to their desk. They can actually elevate themselves into being a business owner. That philosophy, just helping them change their mindset and see the business as a business, as opposed to them being an attorney, wanting to shift that mindset so they can have a happier life and a more successful practice.
That's great. That's fantastic. So what's the one thing you wish more solo and small firm lawyers understood about building a saleable practice that serves them?
I would say there's a misconception for a lot of solo attorneys and even sole practitioners kind of in a lot of service-based industries where they think they are the business. And I think changing that mindset from they are the business to the service that they offer is the business is a big shift. And I think that will help them then focus on the keys to determining if they have a sellable practice. And so I think it comes down into three pillars once you realize the service is the business is sales. So having clients, your systems, your process being documented and a way that you do things, and then having the right people in place to execute that. And so I think if you have even one of those, you've got a sellable practice, right? Because for a struggling attorney, having a phone number that rings with incoming clients is going to be a viable business. Other people might want something that's more turnkey and has systems and staff in place. But I think knowing where your deficiencies are in that, if you plan, then you can build on what you're missing. But I really think any practice is sellable. It's really just the mindset.
Yeah. So I love that because that the sales piece, or I would call it biz dev, or so business development piece, is really where a lot of buyers focus on, right? Because they want to make sure that the phone is going to continue to ring, which it is because it has, right? But those other two pieces make for a practice that is an enjoyable practice. So having the systems and having the people who are there, because then it really becomes a business, right? So ultimately, what is a business? It's just this ongoing operating entity, and we can move people in and out, and they understand how to work it. And we have this machine that produces people who are ready to buy our stuff, right? And we service them, and then we bill them, and we make money off of them, and that's a business. And any law firm can be a business. So that sounds like that's perfect. I love it. It's wonderful. So good. Any other thoughts on these selling a firm, coaching, that kind of thing?
Actually, yes. When we talked about the staff, I don't think we dove into that very much, but I would say people management is the biggest pain in running a firm, right? And so I think that law firm owners, kind of that going from lawyer to CEO, is realizing that it's your duty and responsibility to coach your team. And by coaching your team and instilling autonomy in them really helps them to actually work better for you, so that they have some ownership stake in the entity, and then allows you to be removed from the process. So I would think, staff development is going to be key.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I would agree with that. And I would say that the best way to find out if your staff is up to speed is to take a month off.
Yeah.
So good. Jennifer, how can people get in touch with you?
They can find me on the World Wide Web. My website is www.bondy.law. So pretty easy there. It's Bondy, not to be confused with Bondi. And we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. So if you find or search for Bondy Law, you'll find us.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being on. I appreciate your time, and think our audience got a lot of valuable information out of our conversation today.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Perfect.